The red dust swirled outside the reinforced windows of Habitat 9, a small outpost perched precariously on the edge of Valles Marineris. Dr. Mayan watched the patterns form and dissipate in the thin Martian atmosphere, her mind wandering to the silence that had engulfed Mars Prime colony for over a year now. The year was 2087, and humanity's greatest extraterrestrial settlement had gone dark, leaving only whispers and static where once there had been the triumphant sounds of human achievement. Anne brushed a strand of black hair from her face, tucking it behind her ear as she adjusted the communication array for the 5th time that day. As both an information engineer and a biologist, she had been specifically deployed to Habitat 9 with one critical mission: restore the last communication channel with Mars Prime, or confirm what Earth already feared, that their ambitious Martian colony was lost forever. Any luck? Lieutenant Luke Kahn appeared at her side, his practical demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos of her workstation. Screens flickered with diagnostics, and spare parts littered every surface. "Nothing yet," Anne replied, her eyes never leaving the monitor. 4 light minutes from Moonbase, and yet it might as well be 4 centuries for all the good it's doing us. Kahn nodded, understanding the frustration. The electromagnetic dust storms that plagued the planet had only grown worse in recent months, wreaking havoc on their sensitive equipment. Habitat 9 was supposed to be a temporary research station, not a frontline base for a rescue operation that seemed increasingly hopeless. "The director wants an update by evening," he said, his voice carrying no judgment, just information. "The Earth Alliance is getting impatient," and sighed. "Tell them what I've told them every day for 3 weeks. I need more time." As Kahn left and turned back to her equipment, the mission parameters were clear: restore communications, assess the situation, report back. But for Anne, this was more than a mission. Somewhere in the silent expanse of Mars Prime was Professor Havai, her mentor and closest friend. If there was even the slightest chance Vi was alive, Anne would find her. The console suddenly emitted a low-pitched beep and froze, her hands hovering over the keyboard. It happened again, a pattern of pulses, weak but undeniable. She quickly activated the recording equipment, her heart racing as she watched the signal pattern form on her screen. It was meaningless at first glance, random electrical impulses that could easily be dismissed as interference from the dust storms. But there was a pattern there, something almost mathematical in its repetition. This wasn't natural. This was deliberate. "I found you," she whispered, pressing her palm against the cold screen. "I'm coming for you, Vi." In that moment, Dr. Mayan made a promise to herself. Whatever it took, whatever sacrifices she had to make, she would find the source of this signal and bring home any survivors. The fate of Mars Prime and her friend depended on it. The next morning, Anne called an emergency meeting in Habitat 9's cramped command center. The station's small crew gathered around the holographic display as she presented her findings. "It's not much," she admitted, pulling up the recorded signal pattern. "But it's definitely artificial. It's coming from one of the survey satellites that used to orbit around Mars Prime." "Could be automated," suggested Tran, the communications specialist. His skepticism was evident in his furrowed brow. "A dead system, sending out its last breaths." "I thought of that," Anne replied, switching to a different display. "But look at the timing. These pulses change pattern every 17 hours. That's not consistent with any automated distress beacon I know of." Lieutenant Kahn leaned forward, studying the data. "So someone's alive out there, manually sending signals? Or something is controlling the satellite remotely?" Anne said, "Either way, it means there might be survivors." Director Nguyen, the station commander, had remained silent until now, a stern woman with decades of space experience. She regarded Anne with a measured gaze. "What are you proposing, Dr. Anne?" I need to decode this signal. And to do that, I need more power diverted to our communications array and permission to modify the main satellite dish. That would mean diverting resources from life support, Nguyen countered. We're already running on minimal power due to the dust accumulation on the solar panels. Anne had anticipated this. With Lieutenant Khan's help, I can reconfigure the system to operate more efficiently. We won't compromise life support. Khan looked surprised at being volunteered but nodded in agreement. It's possible. Risky, but possible. The room fell silent as Director Nguyen considered the request. Finally, she spoke. You have 3 days, Dr. An. If you can't establish meaningful contact by then, we return to our original mission parameters. As the meeting dispersed, Khan caught up with An in the corridor. That was bold, volunteering me without asking. Anne stopped walking and turned to face him. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have presumed. To her surprise, Khan smiled. I didn't say I minded. I'm just curious why you think I'm your best option. Because you're the only one here who doesn't think I'm crazy, Anne replied honestly. And because you're the best engineer we have. Fair enough, Khan said. When do we start? Now, Anne said, already walking toward the communications bay. We don't have a moment to waste. For the next 48 hours, Anne and Khan worked tirelessly. They reconfigured the communications array, rerouted power systems, and developed a new algorithm to isolate and amplify the weak signal. The rest of the crew watched with a mixture of hope and skepticism, many believing this was a futile effort that would only drain their precious resources. As they worked, and shared stories of Mars Prime and Professor Vi, how the colony had been humanity's greatest achievement, a self-sustaining settlement of over 300 scientists and pioneers. Vi had been the lead geologist, passionate about understanding the Martian terrain and convinced that the planet held secrets that could transform human understanding of planetary development. She once told me that Mars wasn't dead, Anne said as she soldered a connection in the modified receiver. Just sleeping, waiting for the right moment to reveal its true nature. Khan handed her another tool. You really believe she's still alive after all this time? Anne paused, considering the question. I have to, she finally said. The alternative is unacceptable. On the morning of the 3rd day, their efforts finally bore fruit. The signal strengthened and began to resolve into a clear pattern, not random noise, but encrypted data. It's a security protocol, Anne exclaimed, recognizing the pattern. This is standard Mars Prime encryption. Khan leaned over her shoulder, watching as she began the decryption process. Can you break it? I don't need to break it, Anne replied, fingers flying over the keyboard. I helped design it. The screen flickered, and then strings of code began to appear. Coordinates, system status reports, and a timestamp that made Anne's breath catch in her throat. This data is recent, she whispered. Less than a month old. But before they could process this information further, the station's alarm blared to life. Red emergency lights bathed the room in an ominous glow. Electromagnetic storm approaching, the automated system announced. All personnel to secure stations. Estimated duration, 6 hours. Anne and Khan exchanged worried glances. The storm would disrupt their communication efforts and could potentially damage their modifications. We need to protect the array, Khan said, already moving toward the exit. No, Anne grabbed his arm. We need to boost it. This might be our best chance to get a clear signal, when the electromagnetic activity is at its peak. That's insane, Khan argued. We could fry the entire system. Or we could finally break through, and countered. The storm will act as an amplifier if we can harness it correctly. Khan stared at her, conflict evident in his expression. The director will never approve this. Then we don't ask, Anne said simply. I'll take full responsibility. After a long moment, Khan nodded. Tell me what you need. Together. They worked rapidly to reconfigure the array, redirecting it to use the storm's electromagnetic energy rather than fight against it. The station shuddered as the storm hit, dust particles battering against the exterior with increasing ferocity. "Systems are holding," Khan reported, monitoring the power levels. "But we're pushing the limits." N was focused entirely on the incoming data, watching as new patterns emerged from the chaos. "It's working! We're getting something new!" The communication screen flickered, then stabilized to show a series of coordinates and a brief message that made Anne's heart stop. "Echo station active. Survivors, Vi." "Echo station," Khan read over her shoulder. "I've never heard of it." Anne's mind raced. "It's not on any official maps. It must be a secondary research site, one that wasn't included in the public disclosures." The implications were staggering. If Mars Prime had established a secret secondary station, and if survivors had managed to reach it. "We need to go there," Anne said, determination hardening her voice. "Go there?" Khan repeated incredulously. "Anne, that's beyond our mission parameters. We were sent to establish communication, not mount a physical expedition." "Parameters change when the situation changes," Anne argued. "We now have evidence of survivors. We can't just ignore that." Khan was about to respond when the console suddenly sparked and went dark. The power surge from the storm had overwhelmed their modifications. "No!" Anne cried, frantically trying to restart the system. "No, no, no!" But it was too late. The connection was lost, and with it, their tenuous link to the survivors. The coordinates, however, had been recorded. Echo Station was real, and somewhere in the vast Martian landscape, Professor Vi and others might be waiting for rescue. The aftermath of the storm brought more than just technical difficulties. Director Nguyen was furious when she learned of An and Khan's unauthorized modifications to the communication array. "You risked the entire station," she shouted, pacing the small confines of her office. "Not just the equipment, the lives of everyone here." Anne stood firm. "We confirm survivors, Director. That was worth the risk." "That's not your call to make, Doctor," Nguyen snapped. "We have protocols for a reason." "Protocols won't save the people stranded at Echo Station," Anne argued. "We have coordinates now. We need to send a rescue team." "Out of the question," Nguyen said flatly. "Our mission is to establish communication and report back to Earth Alliance. We don't have the resources or authorization for a rescue operation," and fought to keep her frustration in check. "Then request authorization. Tell them what we found." "I've already sent the report," Nguyen replied. "Until we receive new orders, we will continue with our original mission. The communication array will be repaired according to standard specifications. No modifications." Anne left the meeting feeling defeated but not deterred. If official channels wouldn't help, she would find another way. She was not going to abandon Vi again. Later that evening, Khan found her in the small hydroponics bay, sitting among the carefully cultivated plants that supplemented their food supplies. It was the most Earth-like place in the station, with its humid air and green growth. "How bad is it?" Anne asked without looking up. "The array is completely fried," Khan replied, sitting beside her. "It'll take at least a week to repair, maybe longer." Anne nodded, having expected as much. "And Nguyen?" "She's assigned Tran to oversee the repairs. We're both officially restricted from the communications bay." A heavy silence fell between them, broken only by the soft hum of the hydroponic systems. "I'm going to Echo Station," Anne finally said, "with or without authorization." Khan didn't seem surprised. "That's at least 3 days' journey in the rover, across some of the most dangerous terrain on Mars. And that's assuming the coordinates are accurate." "They're accurate," Anne said with certainty. "Vi wouldn't make a mistake like that." "And how exactly do you plan to get the rover? Nguyen has restricted our access to pretty much everything." Anne turned to face him, her expression resolute. "I haven't figured that part out yet," But I will. Khan studied her for a long moment, then sighed. You know, when they assigned me to this mission, they said it would be routine. Babysit some scientists, fix some equipment, go home. No one mentioned anything about rebellions and rescue missions. You don't have to get involved, Anne said quickly. This is my fight. That's where you're wrong, Khan replied. The moment I helped you modify that array, it became my fight too. He stood up, brushing off his uniform. Get some rest. Meet me at Cargo Bay 3 at Oro 200 hours tomorrow. I'll handle the rover. Before Anne could respond, he was gone, leaving her with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. She hadn't intended to drag anyone else into this, especially not someone as by the book as Lieutenant Khan. But she couldn't deny that having an ally, particularly one with his skills, significantly improved her chances of success. That night, Anne barely slept. Her mind raced with possibilities and contingencies, planning for every scenario she could imagine. By the time Oro 200 hours arrived, she was ready. Having packed a small bag with essential supplies and left a recorded message explaining her actions in case she didn't return. Cargo Bay 3 was dimly lit when she arrived, the emergency lights casting long shadows across the floor. There was no sign of Khan, and for a moment, Anne feared he had changed his mind, or worse, that he had been caught. Then, a soft hiss came from the far corner of the bay, and the door to rover hangar slid open. Khan appeared, already dressed in an expedition suit. You're late, he whispered, motioning her forward. How did you get access? Anne asked, as they slipped into the hangar. Let's just say not everyone on this station agrees with the director's cautious approach, Khan replied cryptically. Men from engineering helped override the security protocols. We have about 20 minutes before the systems reset and the alarms trigger. The rover, a bulky, six-wheeled vehicle designed for long-range Martian exploration, sat ready, its systems already humming with life. And noticed it had been modified, with extra oxygen tanks and power cells strapped to its exterior. I did some upgrades, Khan explained, seeing her surprise. If we're really doing this, we're doing it right. They quickly loaded their supplies and performed the final checks. The hangar's exterior door began to open, revealing the dark Martian landscape beyond, illuminated only by the distant, diminished light of the sun. Last chance to back out, Khan said, his hand hovering over the ignition. Anne fastened her safety harness and looked straight ahead. Drive! The rover lurched forward, its massive wheels gripping the Martian soil as they left the safety of Habitat 9 behind. Anne didn't look back. Her focus was entirely on what lay ahead, on Echo Station and the possibility of finding Vi alive, as they drove into the Martian night. And couldn't help but feel a sense of both dread and exhilaration. They were breaking every protocol, risking their careers and possibly their lives, all on the strength of a fragmented message and coordinates that might lead nowhere. But deep in her heart, she knew this was right. This was why she had come to Mars in the first place, not just to study and observe, but to make a difference, to save lives if she could. The terrain grew increasingly treacherous as they moved deeper into Valles Marineris. The vast canyon system was a natural wonder, stretching over 4,000 kilometers across the Martian surface. But its beauty came with dangers, unstable cliffs, hidden crevasses, and unpredictable dust slides that could bury the rover in seconds. Khan navigated skillfully, his focus unwavering as he guided the vehicle through the challenging landscape. Occasionally, he would point out particularly stunning formations, a cathedral-like spire of red rock, or a series of rippling dunes that caught the early morning light. You seem to know this area well, and observed during their 6th hour of travel. I was stationed at Mars Prime for 3 months before the blackout, Khan replied, his eyes never leaving the terrain ahead. Part of the security detail. We did regular patrols through this section of the canyon. This was new information. You never mentioned that before. You never asked, he said simply. After a pause, he added, I knew Professor Vi. Not well, but we spoke a few times. She was passionate about her work, always excited about some new discovery. Anne felt a fresh pang of hope and longing. That sounds like her. Always convinced that the next rock sample would change everything. She talked about you too, Khan continued. Said you were the most brilliant information engineer she'd ever met. That you could make systems talk that others thought were dead. Anne smiled despite herself. She always had too much faith in me. Maybe, Khan conceded. Or maybe she knew exactly what you were capable of. They lapsed into comfortable silence after that, each lost in their own thoughts as the rover continued its journey. The Martian sun climbed higher, casting harsh light across the rusty landscape and creating mirages in the distance. It was during their brief stop to check the rover's systems that Anne first noticed the dust cloud on the horizon. At first, she thought it was just another mirage, a trick of the light on the thin atmosphere. But as she watched, it grew larger, moving with purpose. Khan, she called urgently, we've got company. He joined her, shielding his eyes against the glare. His expression turned grim. Patrol rover from Habitat 9. They found us faster than I expected. Can we outrun them? Anne asked, already calculating their options. Khan shook his head. Not in open terrain. They're using the light patrol vehicle, faster and more maneuverable than ours. Anne's mind raced. They couldn't go back now, not when they were so close. According to their navigation system, Echo Station was less than 50 kilometers away. We need to disappear, she decided. Is there anywhere we can hide the rover? Khan scanned the horizon, then pointed to a jagged line of cliffs to the east. There's a network of caves in that formation. If we can reach them before the patrol spots us, we might be able to conceal our position. They wasted no time, climbing back into the rover and accelerating toward the cliffs. The vehicle bounced violently over the uneven terrain, equipment rattling around them as Khan pushed the engines to their limits. The patrol was gaining on them, now clearly visible in the rear cameras. Anne could make out the Earth Alliance insignia on its side and the mounted communication array. They would already be reporting back to Habitat 9. They're hailing us, she reported, watching the communication panel light up with incoming signals. Ignore it, Khan advised, his knuckles white on the steering controls. We can't afford to stop now. The cliffs loomed larger as they approached, their rust-red faces scarred with dark openings that might offer sanctuary. Khan guided the rover toward a particularly large cave entrance, partially obscured by a fallen rock formation. Hold on, he warned, just before taking them through a near-impossible gap between two boulders. The rover scraped through with a screech of metal on stone, the sound reverberating painfully inside the cabin. Anne winced but said nothing, her eyes fixed on the rear camera feed. The patrol vehicle had slowed, unable to follow through the narrow passage. Khan didn't stop until they were deep inside the cave system, the darkness enveloping them completely, except for the rover's headlights. Only then did he cut the engines, plunging them into a silence broken only by their ragged breathing and the distant echoes of the wind outside. Do you think they saw where we went? Anne whispered, as if the patrol might hear them even from this distance. Maybe, Khan admitted. But they can't follow with their vehicle, and they won't risk a foot pursuit without backup. He checked the rover's systems. We damaged the undercarriage getting in here. Nothing critical, but we'll need to make repairs before we continue. Anne nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. How long? A few hours. We should use the time to rest anyway. We've been driving nonstop. As Khan set to work on the repairs and examined their surroundings, the cave was larger than it had first appeared, extending deep into the cliff face. The beam of her flashlight revealed smooth walls, polished by ancient water flows, and strange, geometric patterns that seemed almost artificial in their regularity. Curiosity piqued. She moved deeper into the cave, following a narrow passage that sloped gently downward. The air grew noticeably warmer the further she went, and there was a subtle change in its composition that her environmental sensors couldn't quite identify. The passage eventually opened into a vast chamber that took her breath away. The ceiling soared at least 30 meters above, dotted with stalactites that glowed with a faint, phosphorescent light. But it was what lay at the center of the chamber that truly astonished her. A pool of liquid, too clear to be water, that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. "Khan!" she called, her voice echoing strangely in the cavernous space. "You need to see this." He appeared minutes later, breathless from hurrying down the passage. "What is it? What's wrong?" Then he saw the pool and stopped short. "What the hell is that?" "I don't know," Anne admitted, approaching the edge cautiously. "But it's not any known compound that should exist naturally on Mars." The liquid didn't behave like water. It moved with an almost sentient quality, ripples forming and dispersing in patterns that defied normal fluid dynamics. Anne's scientific mind raced with possibilities. A previously undiscovered subsurface liquid, perhaps, or some kind of geological phenomenon unique to Valles Marineris. "We shouldn't get too close," Khan warned, reaching for her arm. "We have no idea what that substance is." But Anne was already kneeling by the edge, her scientific curiosity overriding caution. She activated the sampling kit on her wrist device, extending a small probe toward the liquid. "If this is what I think it is, it could revolutionize our understanding of Mars. The planet was supposed to be geologically dead, but this suggests active processes." The moment the probe touched the surface of the pool, something extraordinary happened. The liquid reacted, drawing back like a living creature before surging upward in a perfect column that rose nearly 2 meters into the air. There it hovered, seemingly defying gravity, before collapsing back with a splash that sent droplets flying in all directions. Anne and Khan stumbled backward, shocked by the violent reaction. The sample probe had been completely dissolved, leaving no trace. "We need to leave," Khan said urgently. "Now." Anne couldn't argue. Whatever this substance was, it clearly wasn't safe to investigate without proper equipment and precautions. They retreated hastily from the chamber, only stopping when they reached the safety of the rover. "What was that?" Khan demanded, once they had caught their breath. "I'm not sure," Anne replied, reviewing the limited data her wrist device had captured before the probe was destroyed. "But its behavior suggests some form of reactivity to electrical impulses. The probe must have triggered it." "It looked like it was alive," Khan said, his voice hushed. "Like it was aware of us." Anne didn't dismiss the idea outright. Mars had already surprised them once today. Who was to say what other secrets it might hold? But their primary mission remained unchanged. "The repairs?" she asked, redirecting their focus. "Almost finished," Khan replied, seemingly grateful for the change of subject. "We can be back on the move in 30 minutes. Anne nodded. But her mind lingered on the strange pool. Was this what Vi had been investigating? Had Mars Prime discovered something so extraordinary that it warranted a secret research station? The possibilities were both thrilling and terrifying. As promised, they were mobile again within the hour. Khan navigated the rover carefully back through the cave system, taking a different route that would hopefully avoid the patrol. Night was falling as they emerged onto the Martian surface, the temperature dropping rapidly as the thin atmosphere lost what little heat it had captured during the day. The coordinates for Echo Station led them deeper into Valles Marineris, to a region marked on their maps as the Silent Abyss, a particularly deep section of the canyon that had been deemed too unstable for regular exploration. The terrain became increasingly difficult to navigate, forcing them to reduce speed and proceed with extreme caution. "This can't be right," Khan muttered, as they approached the edge of a precipitous drop. According to their navigation system, Echo Station should be directly ahead, but all they could see was a sheer cliff face descending into darkness. Anne rechecked the coordinates, fear gripping her heart. Had they risked everything for nothing? But no, the numbers matched perfectly with what they had received in the transmission. It must be below, she realized suddenly. Not on the canyon floor, but somewhere on the cliff face itself. Khan maneuvered the rover to the very edge of the cliff, angling the headlights downward to illuminate the vertical rock face. At first, there was nothing to see, just the rusty red stone falling away into shadow. But as they scanned methodically from side to side, a reflection caught their attention, something smooth and artificial embedded in the natural rock. There, and pointed excitedly. About 30 meters down. That looks like a docking platform. Indeed. Carved into the cliff face was a small landing pad, just large enough for a medium-sized rover. A narrow access tunnel led from it into the rock itself. How are we supposed to get down there? Khan wondered aloud. This rover isn't designed for vertical descents. Anne studied the cliff face, noting a rough path that zigzagged down from their current position. I think we can make it if we go slowly. That path looks like it was created deliberately. See how the rock has been cut in places? Khan looked dubious but nodded. If we crash and die, I'm blaming you in the afterlife. Noted, Anne replied with a grim smile. The descent was nerve-wracking. The rover creeping down the narrow path with its wheels, often just centimeters from the edge. Several times they had to stop and clear fallen rocks, or adjust their course to avoid sections that had collapsed since the path was created. But eventually, after what felt like hours, they reached the docking platform. The access tunnel beyond was sealed with a heavy airlock door, emblazoned with the Mars Prime logo, but with an addition, a small symbol of an echo wave that Anne recognized from Vi's research papers on sound propagation through the Martian atmosphere. This is it, she whispered, her heart pounding. Echo Station. Approaching the airlock, they found a standard Mars Prime security panel. Anne's hands trembled slightly as she input her credentials that should have been recognized by any Mars Prime system, assuming it was still operational. For a long, tense moment, nothing happened. Then, with a hiss of equalizing pressure, the outer door began to slide open. It's still powered, Khan said in amazement. After all this time. They guided the rover into the airlock chamber, which was just large enough to accommodate it. The outer door sealed behind them, and the atmosphere began to change, becoming richer in oxygen, closer to Earth normal. When the inner door finally opened, they were greeted by dim emergency lighting illuminating a small garage area. Anne unfastened her safety harness with shaking hands. After so long, she was finally here, within reach of answers, and possibly within reach of Vi. They donned their portable oxygen supplies as a precaution, though the station's environmental systems appeared to be functioning. The interior of Echo Station was surprisingly intact. No signs of catastrophic failure or emergency evacuation. Instead, it looked simply abandoned. Workstations sat with equipment still in place. Personal items still decorated the few living quarters, and the hydroponics bay was overgrown, but still alive. The automated systems, having maintained the plants long after their caretakers had left. It's like they just walked away, Khan murmured, examining a half-empty coffee cup that had long since dried out, and moved purposefully toward the central research lab, where Vi would most likely have been working. The door was secured with another access panel, this one requiring a higher security clearance. Anne hesitated, then entered Vi's personal code, something she wasn't supposed to know, but which Vi had shared with her years ago, just in case. The panel flashed green, and the door slid open. The lab beyond was in darkness, but as they stepped inside, motion sensors triggered the lights, revealing a space that was markedly different from the rest of the station. While the other areas had been neat and organized, this room was chaotic, Equipment hastily pushed aside, papers scattered across workstations, and the walls covered in complex equations and diagrams drawn directly onto the surface. And in the center of it all, a containment chamber housing a smaller version of the mysterious pool they had encountered in the cave. They found it too, and breathed, approaching the chamber cautiously. They were studying it. Unlike the natural pool, this sample was clearly under careful control, surrounded by monitoring equipment and contained within a field that seemed to keep it stable. Data scrolled across nearby screens, months of accumulated readings and observations. "Anne," Khan called from across the room. "I think you should see this." He was standing by a communications console that was still active, its screen displaying a message ready to be sent. The timestamp showed it had been prepared just 3 weeks ago. The message was brief, but unmistakable. Substance reactive to human presence. Exhibits properties consistent with silicon-based cognition. All attempts at established communication failed. New approach initiated. Send reinforcements immediately. Vi. Anne stared at the screen, her mind struggling to process what she was reading. The liquid they had discovered wasn't just an unusual geological feature. It was potentially alive, a completely different form of life from anything humanity had ever encountered. "She's alive," Anne whispered. "Or at least, she was 3 weeks ago and she's still here somewhere." As if in response to her words, a soft beeping sound emanated from a door at the far end of the lab, a door they hadn't noticed before, partially hidden behind a large equipment rack. The beeping was familiar, the pattern of an emergency medical alert used in all Earth Alliance facilities. Anne rushed toward the sound, Khan close behind. The door was locked, but a small window allowed them to see inside, a medical bay, dimly lit and clearly adapted for long-term care. And there, lying on a bed surrounded by life support equipment, was Professor Vi. "Vi!" Anne cried, pressing her hands against the window. "Vi, it's me! It's my Anne!" The figure on the bed didn't move, but one of the monitors showed a spike in brain activity. She was aware, at least on some level. "We need to get in there," Anne said urgently, looking for an access panel. There was none, just a simple mechanical lock that had been engaged from the inside. Khan didn't hesitate. He took a step back and kicked the door hard near the lock mechanism. It took 3 attempts before the door finally gave way. The medical bay was warm and humid, maintained at conditions closer to Earth normal than the rest of the station. The air smelled of antiseptic and the strange, almost metallic scent they had detected near the liquid pool. Vi looked both better and worse than Anne had feared. She was alive, but barely. Her body thin and pale, sustained by the life support systems. But it was her arms that drew their horrified attention. From her fingertips to her elbows, her skin had a strange, silvery quality, almost as if it had been replaced by something else, something that resembled the mysterious liquid in its reflective properties. "What happened to her?" Khan asked, keeping his distance while Anne rushed to Vi's side. "I don't know," Anne replied, carefully taking Vi's hand. The skin was cool to the touch, but not cold, and had a strange texture like nothing she had ever felt before. Vi, can you hear me? It's Anne." Vi's eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then widening in recognition. "Anne?" Her voice was weak, barely audible. "You came." "Of course I came," Anne said, tears filling her eyes. "As soon as we got your signal." "Signal?" Vi seemed confused. "I didn't send any signal. The communications were down." Anne and Khan exchanged worried glances. "Then who sent the message from the satellite?" Khan asked. Vi's gaze drifted to her silvered arms. "It did. The substance. It learned from me, from all of us," and struggled to understand. "The liquid? It's intelligent?" "Not liquid," Vi corrected weakly. "Not really. It's a colony. Billions of microscopic organisms, acting as one, Silicon-based, completely different evolution than Earth life. She took a labored breath. We called it the Echo, because it mimics, learns, adapts. It infected you? Anne asked, horror creeping into her voice as she looked at Vi's transformed arms. No, Vi shook her head slightly. Symbiosis. I was dying. The initial exposure damaged my lungs. It offered a solution, partial integration. Her lips curved in a weak smile. I'm the first human-Martian hybrid. Anne didn't know whether to be amazed or terrified. We need to get you out of here, back to Habitat 9. They have better medical facilities. No, Vi said with surprising firmness. Not yet. You need to complete the work. The Echo. It's trying to communicate with all of humanity. That's why it helped me send the signal. Why it led you here. What does it want? Khan asked. To understand, Vi replied simply. It's been alone, for millions of years. The last of its kind, until we came. Anne's scientific mind was racing, processing the implications. A native Martian life form, one that had survived the planet's transition from warm and wet to cold and dry, adapting and evolving in isolation. The discovery was monumental, potentially the most important in human history. How do we communicate with it? She asked. Vi's eyes drifted closed, her energy clearly waning. The relay. In the main lab, I was configuring it to translate our brainwave patterns into something it could comprehend. It's almost ready. Rest now, Anne said gently, seeing how the conversation had exhausted her friend. We'll figure it out. As Vi drifted back to sleep, Anne and Khan retreated to the lab to examine the relay Vi had mentioned. It was an impressive piece of technology, part standard communications equipment, part custom-built interface that seemed designed to connect directly to the containment chamber housing the Echo sample. This is way beyond anything I've seen before, Khan admitted, studying the complex wiring. She must have been working on this for months. Vi always did work best under pressure, Anne said, a mixture of pride and concern in her voice. She began examining the relay's programming, trying to understand Vi's intentions. It looks like she was trying to create a translation matrix, something that could convert human thought patterns into a form the Echo could understand, and vice versa. Is it safe? Khan asked skeptically. After what it did to her. Anne looked toward the medical bay, where Vi lay sleeping. I don't think it meant to harm her. From what she said, it was trying to help, to save her life after she was already injured. She turned back to the relay. And think about it. If it wanted to hurt us, why send a signal? Why lead us here? It's been reaching out, trying to communicate. Khan didn't look entirely convinced, but he nodded. So, what's the plan? We finish what Vi started, and decided. We establish communication with the Echo, learn what it wants, and then get Vi back to Habitat 9 for proper medical care. They worked through the night, with Anne focusing on the software side of the relay, while Khan handled the hardware connections. The Echo sample in the containment chamber seemed to react to their presence, becoming more active whenever they approached, forming patterns that almost resembled writing before dissolving back into formlessness. By morning, they had made significant progress. The relay was operational, though whether it would actually work as intended remained to be seen. They took turns checking on Vi, who remained stable but unconscious, the silver material on her arms neither spreading nor receding. It was during one of these checks that Anne noticed something strange, a pattern on the medical bay wall that hadn't been there before. It looked like a series of concentric circles with lines radiating outward, similar to a traditional depiction of sound waves. Khan, she called, come look at this. He joined her, frowning at the pattern. Where did that come from? I don't know, and admitted, "But it wasn't here last time I checked." They both jumped when Vi suddenly spoke, her eyes still closed. "It's ready. The Echo is ready to talk." The main lab had changed when they returned. The Echo sample in the containment chamber was fully active now, swirling and pulsing with internal light. The relay had activated on its own, its screens displaying a cascade of data too fast for human eyes to follow. "What's happening?" Khan asked, instinctively reaching for his sidearm. Before Anne could respond, the lights in the lab dimmed, and a holographic projection formed above the containment chamber, a three-dimensional representation of the sound wave pattern they had seen in the medical bay. "Hello, Mayan." "Hello, Luke Khan." The voice that emanated from the relay was strange, not quite male or female, with an unusual cadence that suggested it was learning human speech patterns as it spoke. "I am what you call the Echo. Professor Havai has told me much about you." Anne stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "You can understand us? You can speak our language?" "I learn quickly," the Echo replied. "Your friend's mind has been instructive, as have the databases of your Mars Prime colony." "What happened to Mars Prime?" Khan asked sharply. "Where are the other colonists?" The holographic pattern shifted, becoming more complex. "Many died when they first discovered me. They did not understand what I was, and I did not understand what they were. There was conflict, misunderstanding. Those who survived fled to other facilities. Some reached your Earthships and returned home. And the others? Impressed? Some remain on Mars, in shelters beyond my reach. Others." The pattern dimmed slightly. "Others chose to join with me, as Vi did. They are part of me now, and I of them." The implications were staggering. The Echo hadn't just been communicating with Vi. It had been absorbing human knowledge, perhaps even human consciousness, integrating it into whatever collective intelligence it possessed. "What do you want from us?" Anne asked, the essential question that had been driving her since they received the first signal. The pattern expanded, filling the room with light. "Partnership for millions of years. I have been alone on this planet, the last of my kind, surviving in the deepest recesses where water still flows beneath the surface. You humans brought new knowledge, new perspectives. Together, we could restore Mars to what it once was, make it habitable again, for both our kinds." "Is that even possible?" Khan asked skeptically. "With your technology and my ability to manipulate the environment at a molecular level, yes. It would take time, but it could be done." The Echo's voice became almost wistful. Vi understood this. She saw the potential. Anne's mind was racing with possibilities. If what the Echo was suggesting was true, it could transform not just Mars, but humanity's entire approach to space colonization. A partnership with an indigenous life form that had survived Mars' harsh transformation could provide insights impossible to gain any other way. But there were risks too. Enormous risks. The Echo had already admitted to conflict with the Mars Prime colonists, and its integration with Vi, while apparently consensual, had physically transformed her in ways they didn't fully understand. "We need time," and finally said, "time to understand what you're proposing, to consult with our leaders, to make sure this is safe for everyone involved." "Time is something I have in abundance," the Echo replied. "But Vi does not. Her condition is stabilized, but not cured. She requires more advanced medical care than what is available here." "Then let us take her back to Habitat 9, Khan suggested. "We can return with more resources, more people." The pattern flickered, suggesting hesitation. "If you leave, there is no guarantee you will be allowed to return. Your leaders may decide I am too dangerous to approach." It wasn't wrong, and could easily imagine the Earth Alliance quarantining the entire region, perhaps even attempting to destroy the Echo rather than risk what they might perceive as contamination or threat. Then, come with us, and proposed suddenly. A small sample, contained as you are now, proved to them that cooperation is possible. The pattern pulsed rapidly, perhaps indicating surprise or consideration. That would make me vulnerable. You could destroy me. We could, and acknowledged, honestly. But we won't. You've kept Vi alive all this time. You've shown care for human life. Show us that we can trust you, and we'll prove that you can trust us. A long silence followed, the holographic pattern shifting through various configurations, as if the echo was deep in thought. Finally, it contracted to a simple, pulsing sphere. I will trust you, Mayan, as Vi trusted you. A portion of me will accompany you, enough to maintain the connection with Vi, and to communicate, but not enough to pose any perceived threat. The relay began to hum, and the containment chamber separated into two sections, the larger portion remaining in place, while a smaller sample, no bigger than a coffee cup, was isolated in a portable containment unit. This part of me will go with you, the echo said. It contains the knowledge and connection needed to help Vi, as well as to communicate our proposal to your leaders. Anne approached the small containment unit cautiously. It was self-powered and appeared secure, designed by Vi for exactly this purpose. Thank you, she said to the echo. We won't betray your trust. With the echo's help, they prepared Vi for transport, carefully disconnecting her from the station's life support and transferring her to a medical pod that could be secured in the rover. The echo sample remained close to her at all times, the silver material on her arms occasionally rippling, as if in response to its presence. Will she survive the journey? Anne asked worriedly, as they loaded the pod into the rover. Her condition is stable, the echo assured them. The connection we share will help maintain her vital functions. But we must not delay. The longer she remains without proper medical attention, the greater the risk. With everything secured, they prepared to leave Echo Station, as a precaution, and downloaded all of Vi's research data and the logs detailing what had happened at Mars Prime. Whatever occurred next, this information would be vital to understanding the Echo and preventing future misunderstandings. The ascent back up the cliff face was even more treacherous than the descent had been, with the rover straining under the additional weight of the medical pod. Several times they nearly lost traction on the narrow path, the wheels spinning dangerously close to the edge. But finally, they reached the top and the relative safety of the canyon floor. Set course for Habita 9, and instructed Khan, who nodded grimly and started the engines. They had traveled less than 10 kilometers when the rover's sensors detected multiple vehicles approaching rapidly from the direction of the station. Looks like Director Nguyen sent more than just a patrol to find us, Khan observed, watching the radar display with concern. Can we outrun them? Anne asked, though she already knew the answer. Khan shook his head. Not with our current load, and even if we could, where would we go? We need to get Vi to the medical facilities at Habita 9. Anne made a difficult decision. Then we don't run. We face them and explain everything. When the Habita 9 security team surrounded their rover minutes later, Anne and Khan emerged with their hands raised, offering no resistance. Director Nguyen herself was present, her expression a mixture of anger and relief. Dr. Mayan, Lieutenant Luke Khan, she said formally. You are hereby detained for violation of mission protocols, unauthorized use of Earth Alliance property, and endangering the safety of Habita 9 personnel. Director, Anne replied with equal formality. We have a critical medical emergency and vital information that concerns the future of Mars colonization. Professor Ha-Vi is alive, and we've brought her back for treatment. Nguyen's stern expression faltered slightly at the mention of Vi. Professor Vi is with you? How is that possible? It's a long story, Anne said, and one I'm happy to tell you in full. But first, please, she needs immediate medical attention. The security team approached the rover cautiously, and when they saw the medical pod containing Vi, their professional training took over. Within minutes, they had transferred her to one of their vehicles and were preparing to rush her back to Habitat 9. "And this?" one of the security officers asked, indicating the small containment unit with the echo sample. "That stays with Vi," Anne insisted. "It's keeping her alive. I'll explain everything once we're back at the station." Nguyen studied Anne carefully, then nodded to the officer. "Keep it with Professor Vi for now, but under strict observation." The journey back to Habitat 9 was tense but uneventful. Anne and Khan were kept separate from Vi and the echo sample, treated as detainees rather than returning heroes. But Anne didn't mind. What mattered was that Vi would receive the medical care she needed, and the echo would have a chance to present its case. Upon arrival at Habitat 9, they were taken directly to the director's office, while Vi was rushed to the medical bay. Nguyen listened in stunned silence as Anne recounted everything they had discovered. The echo, its nature, its proposal for partnership, and the truth about what had happened to Mars Prime. Nguyen seemed at a loss for words. "This changes everything. If what you're saying is true, if this echo really is an indigenous Martian life form, capable of communication and cooperation." "It is," Anne affirmed, "and it's offering us something unprecedented, a chance to restore Mars, to make it habitable again through a true partnership. Not conquest, not exploitation, but collaboration." Nguyen leaned back in her chair, the weight of the situation evident in her expression. "The Earth Alliance will need to be informed immediately. This goes far beyond our mission parameters." "I understand," and acknowledged. "But before you make your report, please, speak with the echo yourself. Let it explain its intentions directly." After a moment's consideration, Nguyen nodded. "Very well. Let's go see this Martian." In the medical bay, they found Vi stabilized and showing signs of improvement. The echo sample had been placed nearby, still within its containment unit, but now connected to a communication interface, similar to the one at Echo Station. "Director Nguyen," the echo greeted as they entered, its voice emanating from the interface speakers. "Thank you for your hospitality." Nguyen approached cautiously, studying the swirling substance with a scientist's keen eye. "You can understand me? You know who I am?" "I learn quickly," the echo replied, echoing what it had told Anne earlier. "And your reputation precedes you. Dr. Mayan thinks highly of your judgment, despite your recent disagreements." A hint of a smile crossed Nguyen's face. Diplomatic as well as intelligent. Impressive. She grew serious again. "Dr. Anne has told me of your proposal, a partnership to restore Mars. Is this truly possible?" "With time and cooperation, yes," the echo confirmed. "My kind once thrived across this planet when it was warm and wet. We understand its systems at a fundamental level. Combined with human technology and innovation, restoration is achievable within a human lifetime." Nguyen considered this. "And what do you gain from such a partnership?" "Survival," the echo replied simply. "Renewal. For millions of years, I have existed in isolation, the last of my kind. With humans, there is the possibility of a new beginning, not just for me, but for all life on Mars." The sincerity in its tone was palpable, even through the artificial interface. Nguyen turned to Anne. "Prepare a complete report, every detail, every discovery. I'll contact Earth Alliance Command and request an emergency conference." "And Vi?" Anne asked anxiously. "Our medical team is already working with the echo to understand her condition," Nguyen assured her. "Preliminary results are promising. Whatever symbiotic relationship they've established seems to be beneficial, once properly stabilized." As the days passed, Anne worked tirelessly, compiling all the data they had gathered and helping the station's scientists understand the echo. The Earth Alliance responded with a mixture of excitement and caution, sending specialized teams to Habitat 9 to assess the situation firsthand. Vi's condition improved steadily. The silver material on her arms neither spread nor receded, but seemed to reach an equilibrium, allowing her to regain consciousness and even some mobility. She became an essential intermediary between the humans and the Echo, her unique connection providing insights that would have been impossible otherwise. 1 week after their return, as Anne sat beside Vi's bed reviewing the latest communication protocols, her friend reached out to grasp her hand. "Thank you," Vi said softly, "for not giving up, for finding me." Anne squeezed her hand gently. "I couldn't leave you out there. Not when there was even the slightest chance you were alive." Vi smiled, her eyes drifting to the echo sample that remained constantly near her. "We've started something incredible, haven't we? Something that will change everything." "Yes," Anne agreed, following her gaze. "I think we have." Outside Habitat 9, the endless red landscape of Mars stretched toward the horizon, silent and ancient. But that silence now held promise rather than emptiness, the promise of renewal, of transformation, of life returning to the red planet after eons of dormancy. And somewhere, in the depths of Valles Marineris, in the chamber they had discovered by chance, the main body of the Echo waited patiently, ready for the partnership that would reawaken Mars from its long slumber. The last signal from Mars Colony had not been a final farewell, as Earth had feared. Instead, it had been the first whisper of a new beginning, a conversation between two worlds that would echo across the stars for generations to come.